I would like to call to order the Winthrop School Committee meeting at 6 o'clock on November 22nd. Ms. Hames, can you call the roll call? Ms. Barry? Here. Mr. Boncory? Mr. Martucci?
Yep.
Ms. Swope? Here. Ms. Powell? Here. Mr. Perrin? Mr. Martucci, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any public comment tonight? Any delegates and visitors?
We do. We have our building principals and assistant principals, as well as our executive director of curriculum instruction and accountability. Their role tonight is to give you an overview of the Mcas test results and a brief summary. So we'll start with Laurie Gallivan, who's our executive director of curriculum instruction and accountability. And Laurie, I would say it's best probably for you to be where there's a mic so that the audience can hear you. I know that CAT is streaming our slides on WCAT, but for the school committee, you'll be watching them on this projector here to your right. So we'll start with Laurie. Thank you, Laurie, for coming.
Okay, so I provided you with copies so that I don't have to go through everything, and you can look at them later and come back with more questions, and we'll of course post the presentation after the fact as well for anyone at home. Mr. Crombie. So just to give you an overall, I know a lot of you have looked at the results before. DESE had a special meeting with all of curriculum directors and assistants across the state to give us a little heads up before everything came out, and to point out that these are some of the overall averages across the state. So 46% of students in grades 3 through 8 scored meeting expectations or higher in ELA, 33% in math. And then at the high school level in grade 10, 64% of students in grade 10 scored meeting expectations or higher, and 52% scored meeting expectations or higher in math this past year. It's about a 30% difference across the state than 2019 prior to the pandemic. DESE was very clear that this data, doesn't hold the same meaning as it has in the past, and that, it really should not be used to compare one district to another, or even one child to another for that matter. From one town kind of thing, because it was not necessarily administered with fidelity. Not every child had to take it. If students were remote, they could choose whether or not to come in to take the assessment, or whether to participate in an at-home version. And the test was reduced down to one section. It was not the regular length assessment. So this just gives you an overall general picture. If you look, the red at the bottom is not meeting expectations. The orange is partially meeting, green is meeting, and blue is exceeding. And you see that dark blue line that runs through the orange sections? That dark blue line is telling you where the bar was for 2019 for meeting and exceeding expectations. So that's the difference of everyone, all the orange above, with the exception of the high school, with the 10th grade, has quite a bit of a difference than where we were in 2019, and our aspirations are always to go a little bit higher. And unfortunately, due to the pandemic, went in the wrong direction across the state. This is for ELA. This is just that broken down to show you in the middle column where it says meeting and exceeding. That's the trend by grade, the percentage points that it was down from the 2019 assessment, because remember, there was no assessment in 2020. For math, very similar, except that the gap is larger. And it was very clear that math took the hardest hit across the state in regard to MCAS. And again, those blue lines going through the orange show you where it would have been all green and blue last year, started where those dark lines are in the orange. So we have a large gap across the state to make up in that area. This shows you the change in the average scaled score. So, for example, in 4th grade in 2019, the average scaled score was 501.8. In 2021, it was 498.0, so a difference of minus 3.8. And again, they're scaled scores, but we'll post this again so people can look more in depth if they'd like to at a later time. This is the same thing for math, showing you, look at the difference in the median expectations in the center. So across the state, that's the average difference per grade level in mathematics this year, which is, I think, a really important reason why there seems to be a real push at looking at high-quality instructional materials for the use in mathematics from a lot of my counterparts across the state, and especially on the North Shore. Thank you. This is just talks about the growth. The growth was calculated differently this year because in the past, in 2019, growth was calculated based on a cohort of students that you were grouped in based on how everyone scored. This year, they changed it and they used a historical academic peer group, which changed the value. With the cohort group, it brought us back to about 50 being the average growth potential or percentile ranking. If you flip the next one, you can see this difference. The 50 percentile right in the middle on the left was the same student in 2019, and this is where the student fell this year in 2021, using a historical group of students. So it didn't fluctuate the way it would have, and it was very convoluted when we were all trying to wrap our head around how they came up with this, but they worked with a few different organizations across the state in determining what was the best way to go about projecting this. So it's not, parents should not be shocked if the growth percentile on their students' report that came home looks very similar to this, where it was up in the 50s, maybe closer to 60 last year, and this year it's somewhere in the high 20s. So it's not a reflection that your child did anything, drastically wrong on the Mcas or anything like that, but the way they are calculating changed, and therefore it changed them as overall. And there's a lot more information on the DESE website too, if people want to dig deeper into that as well. So DESE's considerations and responses, they really pointed out that many more students had gaps in their knowledge in math prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Fewer students met or exceeded grade level expectations. Remote and hybrid learning clearly impacted students' academic achievement. And the tests were shorter than the usual Mcas tests, causing individual student performance to vary more than usual compared to previous years. And as well, the Mcas results are only one measure of student growth and achievement. And this was even a smaller snapshot than it usually is. In response, they put out, the Department of Education has shared, which we've shared with all of our building principals, who have shared with their teaching staff, acceleration roadmaps for both teachers and administrators in how to emphasize grade level learning and community building while supporting students with necessary interventions. So the idea is to, obviously there needs to be some remediation at some levels in small groups, but overall the goal is to accelerate learning and find entry points at a student's grade level. So find a place in, for example, 4th grade where the standards can be, where you can come in on a standard at an age-appropriate grade level and still be able to teach something that was missed, let's say, in 3rd grade, but to do it as much as possible on a 4th grade level. And then, when there are still pockets of students who are struggling, find those small pockets to pull out and do some remediation or reteaching, or finding another way to teach it, not necessarily just pulling them aside and doing the same thing, right? We want to look for new ways to engage the students in their learning. And those roadmaps are on the DESE website as well for anyone to take a look at. They point out the state and federal pandemic relief funds that have been released to spend on being able to address the academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs of students as a result of the pandemic. We put up boards at all of the curriculum nights or parent nights at the schools and asked for parent feedback. They put stickers on different areas on the boards that they thought they would like to see the money be spent. Large majority was on after-school activities for students, helping them re-engage socially with their peers, as well as academic supports, which you'll hear more about as the schools are talking as we go on. So a lot of our funding will be put to those directions. And DESE is not issuing new accountability determinations for this school year. Districts will remain and retain their prior 2019 designation until 2022. New designations are given. Winthrop in 2019, our designation was substantial progress towards targets. So we're still in that area right now. Now we're going to move on to our school data. And right now, our assistant principal, Danielle Tucker, who is our acting principal at the Winthrop Banks, will share some data. Obviously, they don't have Mcas data, but she's here to share with you what we're finding right now after coming back after the pandemic and how they're going to try and tackle getting our kids ready to move into third grade.
And if you want to sit right up next to Laurie, or?
I'll move right over here.
And thank you, Danielle, for coming in. As most know, Danielle is the acting principal right now while Ms. Pearson is recovering. I had a meeting with Ms. Pearson yesterday, a lunch meeting, and she looks wonderful and is recovering. So for all the GFB families, you can be assured that she's coming back pretty soon. So it was nice to see her. She was excited that Danielle was going to be able to share this information. They certainly talk every day together, so she's still on the loop. So thank you, Danielle, for stepping in.
Yes, my pleasure. Well, hi everyone, I'm Danielle. It's nice to meet all of you. So tonight I'm going to focus on sharing some second grade data as it most closely aligns to Mcas, as those are the students who will be transitioning to Cummings for next year. But it's important to note that all of our grade levels are displaying similarly, so just keep that in mind as I'm sharing. So pre-COVID, our goal was always to establish a solid foundation of skills and student mastery to get students ready for the next grade level. For second grade, students switch from the transition from second to third grade is one where instruction shifts from learning to read to learning a basic understanding of math concepts to really applying those skills independently. So it transitions from that sort of supported role to the independence, and the application of skills and depth of mastery become the focus. This year, we've had to shift our practice substantially, obviously due to what lies ahead and what is in front of us for the needs of our learners. So while we're using the accelerated approach for instruction as mandated by DESE, we are still moving forward with grade level content and instruction, and we're supporting our students with just-in-time learning opportunities or scaffolding where they need it so that they can access the current grade level content. So we're hopeful that students will leave second grade, moving on to third grade with a baseline of grade level skills. And that being said, I'll start by sharing some of that data with you. So in front of us, we have the fall administration results of the DIBELS data. We focused on nonsense word fluency and our oral reading fluency. So the graphs on the left are a display of DIBELS, and the information on the right is a display of the Renaissance Star, which is a comprehension-specific focused assessment. As you can see, 35% of our students are meeting or exceeding, 35% of our second grade students are demonstrating whole word reading, which is the farthest on the left graph, which is a measure of decoding, blending, and reading words. While 47% of our students, our second grade students, demonstrate oral reading fluency, the measure of a student's reading rate and accuracy. So pre-COVID, it's important to note that 62% of our students had demonstrated whole word reading in the fall administration of the DIBELS in the fall of 2019, while 67% demonstrated oral reading fluency in that same administration of the DIBELS in 2019. And then as it pertains to comprehension, 34% of our second grade students are meeting or exceeding grade level expectations, and pre-COVID, 52% of our students met or exceeded grade level expectations in comprehension during the fall administration. Thank you, we can go on. All right, and now we'll head to our fall math data. So our fall math data comes from iReady. Our iReady diagnostic is administered 3 times a year, once in September, once in January, and once in May, just about May. So we really get some good information throughout the year that will help us adjust our practice and target the needs of our learners. So as you can see, for our fall administration, 10% of our second grade learners are meeting or are on early grade level or above grade level in the area of math, while 90% of our learners are one grade level or more below at this point. But it's important to share that pre-COVID 2019 fall administration of our data, 18% of our students were in the green. So about 8% more of our students. So the question is, how are we supporting our learners? There's a lot that we're doing at GFB. Thank you. We're providing as many opportunities for small group instruction as possible. We've hired 4 part-time retired Winthrop Public Schools employees or elementary teachers to come and do small group targeted intervention with our students, with our first and second grade learners. And we also use our kindergarten teachers to support our first and second grade teachers in their classrooms after the kindergarten students leave for the day. There's a chunk of time that they have before the end of their school day. So that's been helpful in providing targeted support. Some teachers utilize them as they need per the grade level and individual teacher needs and classroom needs. Our reading specialists are serving our first and second grade students that have been identified as below or well below grade level exclusively, despite significant needs amongst our other learners. So it's important to note that typically our reading specialists are able to service our low average students as well. But this year, because so many students fall in our below and well below range, they're not able to support them. But they really are targeting those most neediest learners. We've added an additional classroom, as you know, at the first and second grade levels to maintain smaller class sizes. And that enables teachers to meet the needs of their learners and really pull those small groups and meet with more of those targeted small groups. We increase the frequency of informal assessments so that we can assess for learning and not assess for grading. So those assessments are really being used to guide our instruction and to identify the interventions needed to support our learners. We progress monitor our students who are below and well below regularly. So these students, again, we use Dibble's progress monitoring, and we are sitting with their teachers are sitting with them, and they're able to go through and really see the progress that they're making and track that progress and intervene where needed. And of course, vary our interventions based on what the students are showing. We use iReady and Accelerated Reader, which are programs that match the content presented to the individual learners to the learner's needs, which is extremely helpful in making sure that their instruction and their practiced opportunities are targeted towards what their needs are. We utilize horizontal grade level planning, so teachers meet horizontally with their grade level teams, and they target the students as a whole grade level, and they are able to use the interventionists to meet the needs of the students of the grade level as a whole. And then finally, the implementation of 2 very, very, very great programs that we've started this year. The first is Letterland, our new phonics program. And the second is Haggerty, our new phonological awareness program curriculum. And these are really allowing teachers to provide explicit and systematic instruction in the areas of phonics and phonological awareness, which are huge in early literacy. And I'm going to introduce Nicole Gregory, who is going to share some data from the ATC.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Gregory. I'm the assistant principal at the ATC. I taught 4th grade there many years before this, so slide. Looking at our current 4th grade students, I think that our school data is very illustrative of what we are seeing in the state as far as larger gaps in math and ELA. So what we saw looking at all 3 grade levels is that this really illustrates the need, as Ms. Gallivan said, for the high quality curriculum. So we have started to use what's called illustrative mathematics, and it's a math curriculum that is standards based and highly researched, and we're using it across the entire school with fidelity. In 5th grade, we are seeing a little bit better performance than the state in ELA, and again, the bigger discrepancy in math. And the same in 6th grade. A little bit better than the state in ELA and a bigger discrepancy in math. And also there is a little gap in the science, technology, and engineering. So something that we're doing to address that is this year we actually applied for a grant with a company called Playful Engineers, and they're gonna come in February and do a Zoom with the entire 5th grade where they are gonna use math and science together to kind of do an experiment with, they'll send different materials and things like that. So we thought that now that we have the ability for the students to share materials and work again in groups, I think that's going to help us with our science progress. So what we're doing as a whole school is continuing to target the SPED and EL learners in both ELA and math, because when we drilled down into those subgroups, we did see larger gaps. So we want to make sure that we are meeting their needs. And to intervene for the students that aren't meeting expectations, we have scheduled daily response to intervention blocks. So with this new math program, there is 1 hour of the math block that is on grade level learning. And then we allow for a half an hour of this response to intervention time. So that is where you would build fact fluency, fill in some of the gaps of the standards that were not addressed during remote or hybrid learning, and kind of backfill the pre-grade level standards to help them understand what they're learning in the whole class. We're also using our daily common planning time with the reading and math specialists so that they can help target the needs of each group. We're having data meetings with those 2 specialists quite often in the pod and common planning time so that the teachers can look at their own students and see the needs of their class. The benchmark testing that we use the STAR test just like they do at the GFB, and we're doing that 4 times this year as opposed to 3 times in the past, just so that we can keep progress monitoring and actually helping us to also see how illustrative math is working for all of our students. It is definitely a shift in instruction where students are more encouraged to productively struggle. So they're making their own learning and the teacher is acting as a facilitator. So the students are doing a lot of pair talking, they're doing a lot of math vocabulary, they're doing a lot of working together and then coming back with the teacher kind of bringing it all together at the end. So it's really helping them to, you know, not just learn an algorithm, but kind of understand the conceptual background of the math, which is illustrated by our data. I think it's really going to be helpful for us in the future. And I'll turn it over to Brian, principal at the middle school.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Brian Curley. I'm the principal at Winthrop Middle School. So I guess we'll start off with our current grade 7 students. Last year in 6th grade, very similar to what you saw at the elementary level, math was our biggest struggle. We felt that our youngest students struggled in terms of with remote learning and hybrid learning in mathematics. So as you notice with math, we were 10% below the state. Historically, our 6th graders are right around the state average or higher. So that was something we noticed from when the kids, came back into school, and we had, multiple conversations throughout the year with our staff. ELA, our students did very well at the 6th grade level, 4% above the state average. Historically, ELA, middle school's done very, very well. Math, we're typically on the state average, and as I mentioned before, our 6th graders, our youngest kids, struggle the most. So our current 8th grade, so 7th grade, so right along with the state average for the most part, ELA and math. I felt like our older students, adjusted more to remote learning and hybrid learning. So for the most part, historically, we're right along the state average, sometimes slightly above in a normal school year. So our current 9th grade students, who are now in 8th grade. So first, I'll jump down to science, technology, and engineering. So we were 13% well below the state. I was not surprised to see the results just the fact is we moved into a brand-new school. The curriculum that we purchased was hands-on for lab aids and CPUP. So our science department had to make modifications, accommodations throughout their programming. So I know they had a difficult time trying to teach the standards without the hands-on opportunities. They're excited now, kids are back working in groups, the guidelines have changed. So kids are enjoying science a lot more they did this year than last year. Last year, a teacher might do a demonstration on a Zoom and they would have to watch and take notes. When typically now they're working in groups of 4 or 5 students. And I think we're gonna see a big push for this upcoming year in science. In math and ELA, very close to the state average. And again, our students, for the most part, were fully remote up until, I think it was January 1st. So again, comparing to other schools, a lot of other schools were able to get in-person learning before Winthrop Public Schools. So now what I wanted to focus on is more in terms of, what do we do now? We can't focus on the past, we gotta focus on the future. So we did similar to the other schools. We identified the different standards in each subject area and grade level that our students struggled with. We spent our first half a day, I think it was October 6th, on looking at Mcas scores, STAR scores. Excuse me, my voice is a little spent from coaching 7 basketball games over the weekend, so I apologize. But we took a lot of time looking at the standards we struggle with the most. Was it happening during remote learning? Was it during hybrid? Was it during in-person learning? I can tell you specifically in math, a lot of it was during remote learning. There were some areas we can always make growth on. So as a grade level, at each grade level, we're trying to focus on the areas but also move forward similar to the other schools. We're gonna monitor student growth throughout the school year using STAR 360, very similar to the ATC, and also our internal assessments. Now, Ms. Gallivan mentioned earlier about accelerated learning, how the Department of Education is trying to accelerate learning where we have to teach the current standards, but also close those gaps from last year, right? So we decided to kind of take a model at 7th and 8th grade and putting students in different skills classes for a 6-week period, where for 3 days out of that week, they're grouped for the most part based on ELA and math ability. And what they're doing is they're working on current skills and previous skills. So we're trying to use that additional time outside of a normal 55-minute math or ELA class. And what happens is every six weeks, they will circulate to a different class. Now, the students that did really, really well, for the most part, they'll get some enrichment opportunities, but we want to make sure we provide enrichment to all students. So we're targeting some of our neediest students, maybe earlier on in the first couple cycles, but we still think it's important for the students who maybe struggled to get some of those enrichment classes as well. In the past, at the middle school, for ICE block, if a student needed math or ELA intervention, no matter how hard they work, a student could be in some type of intervention all year long. And by the time you got to 7th and 8th grade, it was very hard to keep them motivated. So we decided to have a model in place where they'll circulate through all 4 different subjects so they get the same opportunities. They might get some more targeted intervention. We thought it was important in terms of student engagement to provide those opportunities. One of the things we wanted to do was also monitor student attendance. For the most part, students who struggled were students who probably were the least engaged during remote learning. These are some of the students that maybe didn't come back to school, they were fully remote. Maybe these were students who maybe weren't as supported at home as maybe some other families. So our first trimester ends on December 2nd, I believe. And what we want to do is look at the attendance of some of these students to make sure that they're attending school. We're putting supports in place to help them show growth. Ideally, you would think the students that were the least engaged who are now back in school, we're hoping to see the most growth this upcoming school year. And now the last thing, take apart the whole academic piece, and I do think it ties, especially at our levels, creating additional opportunities for students to engage. We brought back cross-country this past fall. The boys and girls teams had some great success, and they had a lot of fun in the process. This winter, we're bringing back girls and boys basketball for the first time in at least 15 to 20 years. So we're going to have tryouts. I believe it's the week before holiday vacation. In the spring, we're going to be having outdoor track. We were slated to have outdoor track pre-COVID, and then when things hit in March, we had obviously canceled the season. And working with Ms. Gallivan and some of the grant funding, some of the programs that we're looking to add for after school, before school, over the next few weeks is our counselors are looking to do a crafting club for students. I believe that'll be after school. Some of our ELA and our art teacher want to do a literary magazine. Mr. Dupont, our phys ed teacher, is going to do morning basketball as more of an intramural program. I think it's going to be 2 or 3 days a week, and depending on how it goes, we can expand it. But also looking to do some type of, we have a STEM club currently, but Ms. McCarthy wants to do more of an electronics robotics club with our middle school students. So all those things got approved by the grants. Thank you to Ms. Gallivan. And the goal is to re-engage students outside of the academic piece. Everybody, it's easy to look at the news and focus on scores and how they drop throughout the state. But especially at our level, students need to be, excited outside of the academics. So I think we're off to a pretty good start on that piece. And the more we can add, I think the better off our kids are going to be. In addition, we have a yearbook club. We have student council, which has about 60 or 70 kids. Mr. Brown and Ms. McGann are doing an awesome job there. We have a STEM club, and then Ms. Daly's drama club always has, quite a few kids in there. So again, we got a lot of good things happening. So again, we look at the academics, but also trying to provide more opportunities for the kids outside of those school hours. So, any questions?
We'll jump to Matt next, then we'll do questions in the end, maybe?
Mr. Crum?
Let's switch spots with you.
Hello everyone, Matt Crombie, the principal at Winthrop High School. Just wanted to go through these scores, and I will say that despite everything that our students had been through last year, I felt that we had a pretty strong showing on our MCAS. The current juniors are the ones that we're looking at here that took the test last year in the spring in the hybrid model. So we were back to school hybrid when they took the test. As you can see, ELA, we had 71% of our students in the meeting or exceeding expectations range, which was 7% higher than the state average. So we were pretty excited to see that. And then the math as well has always been something that we focus on, and we were 54% of our students were meeting or exceeding expectations, and that was 2% higher than the state average. While we don't have a lot it's kind of an off year and it's almost incomparable to the other data, it's nice to see that we're coming in above where the rest of the students in the state are scoring for us. And I think there's a lot of reasons why we were able to still see some success from our students on this test, and I think these scores are reflective of the academic program that we were able to roll out during COVID. We were able to kind of continue on with synchronous instruction on a daily basis. We didn't change our schedule. We feel where the high school might have been had a little bit of advantage over some of the younger grade levels is it's a lot easier for high school students to independently engage in learning online and from home. So I think that in a lot of instances that worked well for some of our students, and I think in a lot of instances it worked well for our staff and their comfortability in engaging and learning in that way. So I think that's why we didn't see why our scores are coming in a little bit above where the rest of the state is. In addition to that, I feel like the current juniors, who were the sophomores who took it last year, they missed kind of like their 10th grade year in terms of in-person learning, but they still got about 75% of their 9th grade year, and they still had that solid base coming up from the middle school. So I think that all of those factored into these scores. Just like we do any other school year, our first response to the data is to identify the grade level standards for math and ELA that our students didn't master, and use our department time to break down the data and to use that to drive what we're doing in the classrooms on a daily basis. And our teachers in math and ELA at the 9th to 10th grade level are administering pre-tests at the beginning of the year for MCAS prep tests, and then monitoring their progress as we go through the year, and then certainly doing like practice tests towards the end of the year to see where our students are at leading up to the test. So that practice will stay in place. We're also going to continue to identify our students that are in most need of support for the MCAS. Typically that ends up being some of our special education students and our ELL students that we need to focus in on. Just like Mr. Curley said, we are going to continue to monitor our student attendance. That is a huge piece in the success that they'll see in the classroom. They have to be in school to be there and engaging. And coming off of COVID, we're seeing a lot of the same. We're working hard to address a lot of the same issues that Mr. Curley mentioned, which is getting some of our kids in who maybe stayed remote or didn't have a ton of support at home to get back in and get them engaged. So we're working with them. One of the things that we put together at the high school, I didn't have mentioned up here, but with the help of Laurie, we instituted a new program called the Goals Program at Winthrop High School, which is a way for us to identify some students who need a little additional support in focusing on their academics, setting goals for themselves, and coming up with plans to meet those goals. And through this program, some of these students that we're talking about here that we're targeting are going to have additional support outside of all the supports that are in the school, but from this organization that we're working with that does this every day. And we're hoping that consistent support throughout the school year will lead to more success for those students. And we always move when we do our scheduling. We always look to lower the class sizes in our grade 9 ELA math and biology classes and to keep those numbers low. So there's always a little bit of wiggle room in our schedule, and we know that those are pretty critical courses for our incoming 9th grade students. Certainly this year as they're transitioning to high school after being remote most of last year. And then continued co-taught courses for math, ELA, and science in both grades 9 and 10 to support our high needs students. So, and that's what we have set up for this year. So all of the students who fall into that high needs category do have access to those co-taught classes. Lower numbers and more teachers is always a good formula for student success. So that's Winthrop High School.
Thank you, Mr. Crombie.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee?
Yeah.
Ms. Swope?
I thank you all so much for doing this. I know this is not like real fun. But it's very helpful, I think, for us to understand better as a committee what we're facing, what we're up against. I'd be very interested to hear what we're doing for the students that have done and exceeded expectations and are doing work at grade level. Because when you have so many that are not meeting that, how can we make sure that those students that are doing really well also feel supported? And we talk about individualized educational plans for special needs kids, but those kids that are out there at the top also need it. So I'd just like to hear your comments about that.
So Matt, maybe talk, not that I'm one of you happen to be sitting in the seat, so with the
I should've got up
microphone.
and moved.
Yeah, you should have moved. I mean, you haven't read my game by now, it's a little slow, but I think talking about, so COVID and the pandemic and just the way the world right now has impacted our kids in many ways, academically, certainly we are seeing the social emotional impacts on our students every single day. If you had to take a snapshot in time of, 2 years ago, what a child looked like in a classroom, whether it be physically, emotionally, just regulatory, how kids are regulating their bodies within a school setting. And it's hard for anyone who's not in a classroom to really understand this, because we have the students for 6 hours a day sort of stuck with us. So we get to see early morning, we get to see before snack, before lunch, as the afternoon starts to wind down, and we get to see how our children look in that moment. If you were to compare, if you're an educator and you were to compare a child 2 years ago to a child now, it's a whole different child. Doesn't mean it's a whole different child in a negative way all the time. We've seen some really nice things with our students, but we're looking at educating kids sort of in a different environment, even though they're coming back to the same school. When I think of kindergarten, and I've been in kindergarten classrooms, and certainly I spent some time today in a preschool classroom watching Circle take place. And the difference in the way students can sort of understand how to go to school. We're sort of right back to teaching kids, even our high school kids, how do we go to school again? These kids have spent a lot of time in different environments that are so much less structured than school. And that's not an easy thing to reteach. It takes time. It takes time for the kids to relearn it. It takes time for the staff to relearn it, for us to become patient. I think we've developed a lot of patience during remote learning. And now we're getting to put those patience, those improvements in our patience and understanding of children are really coming to the forefront in the classroom. So it was the preschool class I was in today, the focus was counting the feathers on a turkey 1 through 10. 2 years ago, I think I saw a much more focused group of kids. Today during that lesson, I heard comments about, somebody who, oh, that's number 2. And then yesterday, Miss Andrea, yesterday I fell and I'm bleeding here. And then there were 2 kids going, and I have blood too, and they're pulling up their pant legs and showing their elbows. And typically, Miss Andrea could hold her hands up and everybody would sit down crisscross applesauce and put their hands on their knees at this point in the year. And we're still struggling to find our knees. We know where the boo-boos are, but to understand that hand signal means to sit. So I think we're seeing a different child. But, I think when we talk about our students that have accelerated or can accelerate and continue to accelerate academically, are those kids who have not had a tremendous amount of learning loss. They still have that social emotional piece that we're battling. But at the high school level, we still have dual enrollment. We still have access to online programming where kids can advance, and I'm not speaking for you, but just talking about some of those little things that we have for students that we can push. We don't forget about that middle of the road or high, end learner. So maybe just a couple of points from people about what are the things you might be doing.
Yeah, some of that program, Illustrative Math, is they have, there's all different pathways. There's an EL pathway, there's for accelerating on for students who are meeting and exceeding expectations, and then all of the programs that we use for homework or practice-based are adaptive. So if there is a child who is performing above grade level, then they get more challenging work. And a lot of the good thing with the IM is that because they're talking to one another, you can group diverse peers, and they're both going to learn from that discussion.
I saw that when I went to ACC the other day. I loved it. I thought that it was a great program. Lori was there too, so.
I can speak a little bit to the Gorman-Fort Banks. Again, similar to Nicole, a lot of what we do for our most neediest learners have variations within it for our highest learners. So, for instance, if we're in the classroom and we're doing a reading instruction, a reading group, we would have a targeted reading group for those neediest learners, but would also have a targeted reading group for our highest learners. The accelerated reader and the iReady also, as I mentioned, they target the needs of each individual learner. So they're able to basically prescribe learning that is just right for that learner. And I know some of our second grade teachers, for some of our supports that we have put in place for the interventionists, they're actually, so that they can pull their neediest learners, they're letting the interventionists support their higher learners to give them kind of that next, the boost to get them to that next level. So I think a lot of the things that we do for our neediest learners are also things that match up for our most capable learners.
I would say at the middle school, kind of piggyback off what Ms. Howard said, is kids came back to school as middle school kids. The typical 6th, 7th, and 8th grader looked a lot different in terms of walking into school, how do they carry themselves in the lunchroom. So I think those are some of the challenges, but they're fun challenges, right? It's like, it's our responsibility to help bring these kids, get them to a certain point, right? So ages 11 to 14 can be super challenging. So when they came back, we're starting to see that, all right, there was a lot more, as I mentioned earlier, than that academic piece that we had to focus on. So it's fun to see, like, oh, I normally wouldn't see that out of a 6th grader or an 8th grader. And those are things that we work on every day. So it's important to kind of think about, other than, the academic challenges, there's other challenges as well. In terms of like those high level kids, obviously the goal is no matter what we teach to the grade level standard, right? And the goal is to differentiate in the classroom. We have our tiered ICE block. We have different tiered groupings depending on the class and things like that. And the goal is whether it's an IXL for math or Common Lit, there's always these extra opportunities or these opportunities within class to push those students to, reach their limits the best we can. And whatever, we figure out that's not working, we try to find something that might work out better for our kids. But I feel like they're, our strongest kids or our high level kids are getting what they need, and we're gonna continue to try to push them, to try to get them where they wanna be from one year to the next.
So at the high school, we have a kind of a situation going where during COVID, in an attempt to be flexible with our students in terms of grading and expectations, we were a little bit more flexible, and I think our advanced placement teachers and our honors level teachers were excited to get our students back so they could feel like they could push a little bit harder on them and bring them to reach a higher level than they were at in a remote setting. And so our focus this year for our higher achieving students is certainly has been to raise the bar in terms of what the expectations are in the classroom setting, but also do the best we can to create an environment where the students have access to collaborate with their classmates, which is what they've missed last year, which obviously enhances the learning process, and also have our AP teachers and our honors level teachers be more available and interact with our students outside of the class time in terms of support. So a lot of our AP students spend their AP workshop block visiting their AP teachers and getting individual support from them to help move them forward. And a lot of the AP courses, in a way, kids are working at different paces within the classroom, and now teachers have a much clearer path towards supporting each individual student because they're in front of them during class and during that support period. So that's been a focus of our AP and honors level courses.
Thank you all.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for coming and giving us all this fantastic information.
Just to speak a 2-second summary, and then we'll let them move on, because they've been here since about 6:30, 7 o'clock this morning. We mentioned funding, and we mentioned, if I was sitting at home or if I was on the school committee, I want to know how are we paying for all this? Because there's been a large shift in the number of people we have in our buildings, and that the way we got to a point where we were deciding what we were going to do to intervene, because again, this whole process of returning from remote learning is historic. I mean, it's never been done before, we all know that, and I've said probably 1,000 times, we're building an airplane while we're flying it. Sometimes we drop altitude, and oftentimes we're trying to stay right where we're supposed to be. And we have spent, and when I say we, I'm talking about teachers, custodians, cafeteria staff, central office workers, ESPs, you name it. If you work in the school system, you have been engaged in conversation about what do we do now, and how can we get our students back to a sense of normalcy, whatever that really is, and really pay attention to the most important things, teaching and learning, and the social emotional well-being of children who have just gone through something the likes of which many of us have never seen. So we have spent a tremendous amount of time outside the 8 o'clock till 2:30 time frame talking about what do we need in our buildings for our kids. And these are the people that have been gathering that information and bringing it back to the table, so that when the state of Massachusetts hands you $1 million and says your ESSER II funds are to be used to help kids get back to where they should be, which is a very large term. $1 million sounds like a lot of money, and it goes very quickly. You heard tonight, there's new adjustment counselors in every building. Not because we think one adjustment counselor can fix the last 22 months, but again, we have different children coming back to us than left us, who have different sets of needs. So they're working in classrooms, individually with kids, in small groups, on the phone with outside providers. So we have adjustment counselors. We have nursing assistants. Our nurses, there's no way they could keep up with the contact tracing, the telephone calls, the immunizations, the boo-boos that we talked about earlier today. And nurses are not just handing out Band-Aids and giving out Tylenol anymore. We're working with them in terms of the emotional well-being of our kids, because they see and hear a lot. So we have nursing assistants in the school. We've hired ESPs. What are ESPs? They are extra special people, also called educational support personnel. They are people who come into our school districts who have a love of education and actually love kids. and they come in and listen to teachers tell them what to do in a classroom to either help support our neediest students or work with our high-achieving students to take them to the next level. Sometimes they're working to take kids to the bathroom. Sometimes they're helping with feeding. They can double as a crossing guard on any given day, and they can do attendance checks as well. So our ESPs, we have expanded that, and certainly this committee knows those numbers. The interventionists, so those retired teachers that we pick up the phone and call, and we go through the old teacher list, and I don't mean old in terms of old, because I'm getting there, but teachers who were here before. How many hours can you work? You know, you grab a Lorraine Polo, for a couple of hours a week to work with students. You know you're getting somebody who knows their stuff, who's gonna come in and be focused. So we're using our funds to do that. The curriculum, the amount of curriculum that we've purchased based on data, not just one shot in time with Mcas data, but the continued commitment that we made prior to COVID about benchmark testing of our students. So that we can look at our curriculum and say, is this the curriculum that is working for our students in just specifically reading? You know, if there's a phonics issue with a lot of our kids that we see, do we have the right phonics intervention and curriculum to use? So we spent a tremendous amount of time, not just over the summer, but over the last 20 months and prior to that. So for, just the general public, curriculum review is not a new thing, in case anyone wants to know that. That's been going on for years, but the focus has been a little bit different in the past few years. The schedules of teachers. We have revised our schedules multiple times within the buildings. If we have to take 5 minutes away from a special or 5 minutes away from something else to do tiered intervention, that's a lot of work within a school building to figure out how to squeeze it all in and make sure the kids are getting lunch, getting recess, getting mask breaks, going to the nurse and getting checked, doing Binax testing. So having those schedules and that additional curriculum material, all of that is coming out of these extra COVID funds. Technology, I don't even want to talk about technology anymore because there's so much of it that we have that has enabled our kids to access resources that they never had access to. Keeping up with that, maintaining it, making sure we have enough of it, and it's on a cycle of repair and being able to sustain for a long time. That's where a lot of this money is going. And then just the extra things that we're noticing in kids that need more attention to their intervention and interaction with each other. The additional clubs, the additional academic work, the social emotional learning classes that we've put in place. That's where the COVID relief money that's coming from the town, from the state is going. And we're being mindful that a lot of this has to be one-time expenditures. Some of this COVID money is gonna last for 2 or 3 years. Problem is, if you use it all in year 1, you're in big fat trouble in year 2. I am of the era of 2000, and Gus will correct me, I wanna say it's 3 or 6, of the funding cliff, of ARA funding back in the day when the state dumped, back at that time, it was like 300,000 and we thought we hit the lottery. We didn't know how to use that money before, so you bought all kinds of stuff that you needed to replace. That's a funding cliff that we don't want to get into. So we are being very mindful about how much money we have over the period of time that we have it, so that we can make sure we make the best use of it. That has taken a colossal amount of people to make sure that we're doing that correctly. So kudos to everybody who has helped do that. And we are going to make sure that that funding is used in the best way to support our students and our staff. So it's been a lot. We have a lot of people working in the school district right now, doing the good work we need to get our kids to where they need to be as we move forward. So I just think that's important to know. So thank you to the staff for coming in and giving us your time tonight. I appreciate it. And feel free to exit left while we continue business unless you have any other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of November 8th, 2021?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Swope, second by Ms. Berry. Ms. Hames, can you call the roll?
Ms. Barry? Yes. Mr. Matucci?
Yes.
Ms. Swope?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes. Can I get a motion to approve warrant SVW 22-8 in the amount of $320,857.75?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Martucci, second by Ms. Berry. Ms. Hames, can you call the roll?
Ms. Barry? Yes. Mr. Martucci?
Yes.
Ms. Swope? Yes. Ms. Powell?
Yes. Can I get a motion to approve payroll warrant SVW 22-11 in the amount of $849,891.50?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Berry, second by Mr. Martucci. Ms. Hames, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Martucci?
Yes.
Ms. Swope? Yes. Ms. Powell?
Yes. We have no budget transfers tonight. We have 2 buildings and grounds requests that I will ask that we take together for the Winthrop High School PTC Club, their meetings, and the Arthur T. Cummings PTO. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Motion by Ms. Swope, second by Ms. Berry. Ms. Hames, can you call the roll?
Ms. Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Martucci?
Yes.
Ms. Swope? Yes. Ms. Powell?
Yes. And I would like to take the WinArc separate. This is the Special Olympics, and they have asked to waive the rental fees.
Motion to approve with the rental fee waived.
Second.
Ms. Hames, can you call the roll?
Ms. Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Martucci?
Yes.
Ms. Swope? Yes. Ms. Powell?
Yes. We have no subcommittee reports tonight. Superintendents report.
So I will give you just a brief overview this week, vaccination update, so that folks are aware of that and cases reported in the last couple of weeks. So I believe I gave a pretty good recap the last meeting that we had, so I'll bring you up to the dates of 11/4, November 4th through the 10th. We reported 1 student for being COVID positive and 0 staff members with no evidence of in-school spread. And between the weeks of 11/11 and 11/17, we've reported 0 students and 0 staff. This week's data will go in on Wednesday. In terms of vaccination updates, so as folks know, we have asked, prior to us coming back to school with the mask mandate, this school committee had voted the differentiated mask policy. With our intent was to have parents submit in grades 7 through 12 the vaccination status of their children, as well as all of our staff throughout the school district. And at that time, there was no pediatric COVID vaccine, so that particular group of students was going to be wearing masks because they did not have access. So we had put together an app and had started, I believe in October, asking parents if their children were vaccinated, if they would please submit that data for 2 purposes. The first purpose was for us to get ahead of the game, so that when the state mask mandate was lifted, we would have that data. So it's been slow in terms of folks submitting their data. Our staff, we believe, well over 80% have submitted their data. Unfortunately, the state Department of Education, with this current mask mandate that they have, which is in effect at a minimum until January 15th, they have stated that if your school, a school, has a combination of students and staff that reach 80%, that your school district can ask for a waiver of the mask wearing for anyone who is vaccinated. So that was another reason we wanted to continue to collect this data. At the present time, at least 80%, if not more, of our staff are vaccinated. Our student population may very well be vaccinated. It has been slow to get that data from parents into the schools. So we will be reminding parents again, because we are, approaching December, and we're hopeful. We don't know what the Department of Education is going to do on or about the 15th. If they totally lift the mask mandate, I don't think it's not going to come without some sort of a requirement for people to submit data in order to remove their masks. So we want to be prepared for that. At the present time, at the middle school level, we have 117 families who have submitted their data. And again, this is not grade 6, but for grades 7 and 8. So 117 out of approximately 330. So we have some work to do there. And at the high school, out of approximately 540 kids, we have 149 students who have uploaded their data.
Wow.
That does not mean that people are not vaccinated. It means that parents may need reminders. Some parents may choose not to submit it, and they don't have to. This is not a requirement, it's a request. And it's all a request for preparation for how we can move forward with information for our parents once the department and the state lifts the mask mandate. So we're gonna stay on top of it. We'll be reminding our parents again, if they could please submit that data, because it helps us. It helps us move faster and make better decisions.
Is there a link on the website, or could there be a link on the website?
So there's not a link per se on the website. It's in the letters that we send to families, but we could see if we could get it on the website, so the parents could just go to that link and do their uploading, and work with Tara on that. Have just a specific link, so that it's easy for parents. They don't have to go back in the email and find the letter. So we can get on that.
Okay, great, thank you.
And that's all I have.
Can I ask that question?
Yes.
Lisa, Ms. Howard, so we're currently relying on parents to provide the information or provide their vaccination status of their children, but the town has that information as well. And there's some discrepancies in terms of the age group. So for example, like the older age group of children who would fall into that high school range by the town is being sorted by like 15 to 19-year-olds, right?
Right.
And are we able to cross-reference our student list with that list to get a more accurate read, since parents aren't necessarily uploading their data, or are we not able to do that?
So there's two pieces to that.
Yeah.
So we, meaning the school district, does not have access to the data that the town health department has. So if their data of, 14 to 19-year-olds is all people in this community who fall within that age range, which would be inclusive of our students at Winthrop High School, but not necessarily inclusive of other students. So that large number that the town health department has incorporates kids that go to private schools, kids that are homeschooled. So we don't have access to those, to the names of those students. And even if we did, if we were gonna be applying for a waiver before the 15th of January, we would have to have the evidence that our students who are enrolled have submitted that data to us, and it's been cross-referenced. We can't say we're at 80% based on the figure for the town, so that would be not accepted by them. And then in terms of when the kids return to school, if it was, let's say the 14 to 19-year-olds were 70% for the town of Winthrop, when you looked at Winthrop High School, it could only be 30% of the kids that attend Winthrop High School out of that 70% that have been vaccinated or not, but we would have to have them show that in order for them to be able to remove their masks. Now, the state could at any given moment say, no mask for anybody, it's not required at all. And then we don't need anybody's data.
Right.
We just want to be prepared when we have the opportunity to change any type of practice, that we're able to do it relatively quickly. I can talk to Meredith, but I believe we've had the conversation before, because their data, we can't access any COVID positive cases that go to the town. The town notifies us if a parent doesn't first. So it's sort of, I think it's probably something to do with HIPAA.
Okay, very good. Any other questions?
Sorry, I have one more.
Yes, Ms. Hare.
So, this was an awesome presentation by the principals going through the Mcas data, and gives us a good baseline for what we have to work with. And, I think it's wonderful that we've added additional adjustment counselors to each of the schools and stuff like that. But are there any baseline tests that we can do for our students to measure their social emotional health?
Yeah. So there are not necessarily a test, they're mostly surveys that are done with students. So a test would be, for your emotional well-being, would be that of what a psychologist or a psychiatrist may do with a child in terms of an evaluation. Our evaluation is more collecting data through surveys. So we've just engaged, and hopefully are going to be able to utilize it, with a district-wide SEL evaluation per se, but not a formal evaluation, more of a survey for our students that is something that aligns with all the key points by age and grade level. So it's not the same questions that would be asked in a classroom by a third grade teacher that would be as a 10th grade teacher. This program that we've spent 2 separate days looking at, is moment in time. And it allows you, just like they talked about the benchmark testing for academics, it's a benchmark testing system for social emotional well-being of students. We have done some work with that this year and have gotten some great results from some of our students in terms of what they need. Case in point, some students were looking for different meal choices in the cafeteria during different times of their life that they can't eat certain foods. And we didn't know that the students were looking for that particular type of food because we really never asked. And we found a large population of kids who wanted something that they were able to access and eat during specific times of their life during the school year. That's an easy adjustment that we wouldn't have otherwise known if we didn't ask.
Yeah.
But what this real-time data does in this particular system that we're looking at engaging in through COVID money is the teachers can do it very simplistically in a classroom. Then they would be able to look at that real-time data and say, I have 5 or 6 kids that are feeling this way, and create some intervention with the adjustment counselor or with the classroom aide, or maybe do a specific lesson. Maybe they realize that a handful of kids in the classroom don't understand what bullying means, or maybe there's some teasing going on, or maybe a whole group of kids feels tired every day, and they can figure out how to intervene with those kids. And then you have real data from the kids. Right now, we're going on sort of just checking in with kids, situational stuff. This gives you more data to support what it is that you're doing for interventions. So more to come on that. Laurie and I spent, not 2 full days, but 2 afternoons looking at it. And the folks are coming back out to talk to the principals, who seem very interested in it because it's a quick, easy questionnaire system that allows individual classrooms to collect that data.
Yeah, I
Keep
think, sorry, just to elaborate a little bit more, I think some of the concern that I have is, I don't know, I've been reading a lot of articles, the kids are not okay, like articles, about the emotional health, and I'm probably thinking more of older children, because a lot of them are, or based on this article I was reading, many kids are displaying signs of sort of PTSD, that they've faced a trauma, and you don't know that they've faced a trauma until they react a certain way to something else, and then that indicates that they're struggling and there's something else going on. And I'm not saying that, the schools have the ability to even predict something like that, but
But if you could get a chance to see it coming, or have noticed the signs, just like trauma-informed teaching, which a lot of our teachers have taken professional development and trauma-informed learning, but this is a K-12 program. It's just set up differently at different grade levels, obviously, based on the model that it has, to really identify that stuff with our students that, you might not know until it's too late.
Yeah.
So it's a great point.
Thank you.
Great point.
Is this program called Moment in Time?
Off the top of my head.
I thought,
can't-
no, I wrote it down. Oh, okay.
No, everything I do is at the moment in time, so they probably just fell out of my mouth. I will provide the committee with the name of
Yeah, we should-
the
I
program,
just like
so
to read
I'm
it.
sure you can go in
Thanks.
and, I should know it considering a number of things that I've said.
I was
but
gonna go.
From illustrative math to CASA support systems and some of the financial literacy stuff that we're doing, all the names spin in my head, but I'll get that for you.
Okay.
Thank you. We have no homeschool applications.
We do not.
Do we have any appointments, resignations, retirements, postings, or leave of absence?
Yep, just postings. We're always looking for substitute kitchen workers at all schools, and we are seeking a special education ESP. We've had a few move-ins in the district over the past couple of weeks that are necessitating some support, students coming in with ESPs tied to their IEPs. And right now, we're about as tight as we can be, so we can't flex within, so we have to bring some more folks in.
Okay,
And no leave of absence.
Okay. Under new business, we have the first reading of the revised policy for the query checks. I'm gonna ask that for a motion to waive the reading.
Motion?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Martucci, second by Ms. Berry. Can you please call the roll call? Ms. Hames?
Yes, Ms. Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Martucci?
Yes.
Ms. Swope?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes. We also, under new business, have superintendent goals. We believe that will be taken up at the next committee meeting. We have no unfinished business. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Martucci, second by Ms. Swope. Ms. Hames, can you please call the roll for the record?
Ms. Barry? Yes. Mr. Martucci?
Yes.
Ms. Swope?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.